I think as far as pain goes, that was probably one of the most painful experiences in my life I've had so far.
What chance does a privateer have?
Welcome to Silver Crown.
What do you say to a factory ride?
Welcome back, Riders fans. I've got a 2-digit pro rider, still privateer, but he got his pro number last year. Tristan Lane, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing marvelous, man. Doing marvelous. So, are you pumped on number 90?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I love my number. 711 will always be what I consider my number, but 90 is cool. It's, as you know, it's something that as a privateer, it's a cool badge of honor, I guess. But, it's just another number for me. I try not to take it too serious or, not at all. But at the same time, I'm just pumped that I earned it because, doing it in the 450 class was not easy. And yeah, it was definitely an up and down year, but I have something to show for it at least. So,
do you already have that number on your bike?
I don't know. I was just talking to one of my friends. I need to get in touch with my gear guys and graphics and stuff and put it on there. It's probably going to look a little weird. I may just, or maybe I'll just run 7-Eleven like until the minute before Anaheim 1 and just, just stay 7-Eleven until I race. Who knows?
Do you ever get any jokes about 7-Eleven because of, the gas station 7-Eleven?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, it's funny, like, the whole backstory, I'll make it short, but like I grew up as number 11. That was my number, like my whole amateur career or whatever. And it was just basically because of my first race, we needed a 2-digit number because number 1 was taken and we had electrical tape. So 11, easiest way to do it. And I just stuck with that. So when I went pro, I didn't realize how it worked. Like I didn't know you even had to do like a 3-digit number. I thought I could just be number 11. I didn't know anything really. So, of course, they're like, no, you have this number to choose from or whatever. So I found 7-Eleven, and I was pumped on it just because it had the number. But over the years, I've kind of kicked myself. I'm like, I should have done some kind of sponsorship with 7-Eleven gas station. Just made the whole bike, decked out. But,
yeah, that's where I was going to go with it, too. But, like, dude, have you hit up 7-Eleven? Because we don't get...
I one time, and okay. I didn't get very far. But I did kind of make an effort a little bit, but...
Well, dude, because if you got like a gas card or something, that would be huge because of how many miles you're putting in. That's a really
good point. That's true.
So, how old are you?
I'm 24.
24, and I believe you turned pro in 2020 or earlier than that.
Yeah, so technically, it's kind of confusing because I did my first pro outdoor race in 2017, but it was like, I don't know. I just did like one. So I I technically was pro, I guess, but my first full season was this year. But my first time taking a stab at, pro racing was 2020, I guess, during COVID. I did like I think I did all the outdoors. And I did some supercross too. So it's, it depends how you look at it. Really, I feel like I just turned pro because you know how it is when you do like a full season, that's what a real year of being a professional feels like. All the other stuff, I guess I dabbled as being a pro. You could put it so.
Well, speaking of that 2017 race, that was the MXGP there in Florida, correct?
Yep.
How was it like trying to get your pro license with FIM? Was it difficult or?
Yeah, I remember I had some hurdles. I think what was funny is I had to go get a doctor's appointment, like a physical or something, and I'd never even had one of those before. And I was like, wait, to race? I need one of these? And I'm pretty sure I just went to some local, like, walk-in place. And they were like, yeah, you look pretty healthy. Like, you're fine. And just, that's literally was like nothing. But I do remember the FIM license was a little bit different. But we're lucky because I'm a foreign guy, right, technically. I was able to get exempt. Like, I think it was free versus here in the States, a license is like $300, $350, whatever. And then I'm pretty sure if you are racing the GPs, I've heard that those guys that are, doing that series themselves over there pay a bunch of money to get a license. So I don't really know the ins and outs exactly, but it was a little bit difficult. But then it was cool because, having an FIM license, technically I could have gone and raced, some other stuff overseas if I had the opportunity to. So yeah, overall it's a really cool experience. But I don't think it was that. I don't remember being that hard. Nothing crazy.
Yeah. Have you kept up with it, or has the license expired?
It did expire. Yeah, I haven't kept up with it. I kind of wish I would have, but I've gone overseas to race a little bit. But the stuff I did do overseas, it wasn't an FIM race most of the time, so I didn't really need it. But in the future, I'm hoping I need to get another one. I hope I get those kind of opportunities. So
Yeah, I bet you will, dude. I've been following you more closely this year because of your results, and
yeah,
I just wish we would get more in depth on some of the privateers that are finishing right there, 15th to 25th. Just
yeah.
backing up just a little bit because you're a Florida boy right now. How
Yeah.
was Hurricane Ian? Did you have to get moved somewhere, or did you just stay in your house and just have a crap ton of wind come by, or how was it for you guys?
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like growing up in Florida my whole life, I've been through some hurricanes before. Like this is not my first rodeo. We've seen some crazy stuff. But this one was brutal in its own way because of the flooding. I mean, we had more water than I've ever seen come down in like a 2-day period. It was insane. I mean, we just bought a house 2 years ago, and my house was, like, I'm not kidding you, 20 feet away from me is underwater. My neighbor behind me flooded. My neighbor in front of me flooded. Our street is just like, we just so happened to be like high ground. So we got really, really fortunate. But I mean, I've never been so scared in my life because, like there's neighborhoods of people that their homes are just trashed. I mean, their cars are totaled. I mean, when you drive around Port Orange, which is where I live, kind of near Daytona Beach, I'm like 15 minutes from the Speedway, but our area, like everything's like a bomb went off. Like people's cars are just opened up because they're trying to dry out. And, there's like trees just down everywhere. All the stop signs are down. I mean, houses just ripped apart, like the roofs are off. So it was definitely hectic. I think like 120 people died during the hurricane. So obviously pretty brutal. But, overall we're unscathed, but it was eye opening though, because I mean, it's like an insight. I love to surf, right? Like I'm an avid surfer. That's my hobby when I'm not riding. And a lot of the people around here, like we love hurricanes because it brings, big waves. But then the tragic part is like, obviously, when it's bad, it does do a lot of damage. So overall worked out good for us, but a lot of people didn't have it as lucky.
Yeah, you like it when the track is prepped. You just don't want the giant hurricane coming over your house and tearing it up. So I'm glad you are okay, dude. So you didn't leave your house? You didn't go anywhere else? You just stayed where you were at?
Yeah, we stayed put. So that's where it's a little controversial is we didn't get evacuated because if you like followed the storm, it's hard because it tells you, hey, it's going to hit here. That's where the meteorologists are saying it's going to hit here, in this area. And then it doesn't hit in that area. It hits, 50 miles west or whatever. And even though that doesn't seem like a much, it makes it hard to plan for it because we're in Volusia County. So they don't know what to do. Like we're kind of beachside. So if you were to evacuate and then nothing ends up happening, people moan and groan about it. But then on the other hand, if you don't evacuate these people and then it ends up being really bad, they get way more backlash. So it was a little tough because looking back, we probably should have maybe, gone somewhere else just because it was, dangerous, obviously. But I don't know. I feel pretty competent here. I felt more safe here than anywhere else, honestly. And but I did end up actually fleeing to my parents' house because we just got power back like 2 days ago. So I did go to my parents because they've got a little backyard track. A little sand track I ride. So I just went out there to get some riding in. But yeah.
So is it just you, maybe a dog and girlfriend at your place?
Yep. I have a fiance, Sydney.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And so it was just us, just kind of holding down the fort, just trying not to get blown away, really.
So how long have you known your fiance? Because a woman that can love a rider is a special human being because riders are incredibly needy and big babies when they get hurt and they need a lot of pat on their back to be like, hey, babe, I'm riding well, aren't I? I'm doing well. So how long have you known her?
Oh, man, you're totally right, by the way. So I've known Sydney since I was 12 years old. So I'm 24 now. So, yeah, a long time. So we actually have been dating for like 9 years, and we're getting married in December. So we're pretty excited about that. But, I've known her forever. I mean, we go way back, like more than like high school sweetheart, like, middle school and stuff. Yeah. So she's been around it. Like I always joke, she's rode a dirt bike like once or twice in her life, but she knows so much about the sport just because she's lived it and breathed it with, you know how it is. Like you kind of have the highs and the lows and everything in between. So, I credit a lot to her, not trying to get all mushy or anything here, but she's like my little team. So I'm grateful for her.
Does she go to the majority of the races with you?
She comes, and yeah, she's an RN at a hospital, so she's a nurse.
Wow. Marrying up. Good for you,
Yeah,
Tristan.
yeah,
and
I know
in the
she takes
field.
care of her, so.
Yeah, yeah. Does she ever sneak you in to get like an X-ray of your hand or something when?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of funny, and this is probably like I probably shouldn't even say this, but yeah, she gets all sorts of stuff like that done. I mean, she has radiologists that she works with that read all my X-rays and MRIs for me, so I save a bunch of money not having to go and more than importantly time, because you know how it is.
Yeah.
You get injured, and then they want to make an appointment to go read your X-rays or your MRIs, and I'm like, you become like a a part doctor after so many injuries. You almost feel like you can diagnose yourself, but having her friends as a resource makes a big difference. So, we kind of sneak some of that stuff here and there. And I remember one time I think it was at the MXGP race actually. I got so dehydrated after the race. Like she just gave me an IV, and that was kind of nice. So there's certain pros and cons to having a nurse as your significant other, and that's one of the
heck yeah. My wife's in vet school right now, and I'm like, dude, couldn't this have happened like 10 years sooner? I could have really used you 10 years ago. Just unlock the vet door and, here we go. Here's all the sutures, whatever you need. Okay, last question on that. What is like the worst injury she's had to take care of you on?
That's a good question. So it's hard to say. Like when I say my worst injury, I always go to I broke a femur, and those are pretty fun. And then it got infected, and that was a nightmare. So I almost lost my leg. It was pretty bad, but that's like what sounds the worst. But really, I've had a lot of issues with my wrist. I did the scaphoid bone. I'm sure you've heard about all about that. It has a really poor blood flow. So I broke it when I was like 16. And then we didn't know anything, knew any better. I never knew hey, this is something you need to take really serious. And I just kept riding with it broken. And then I got it x-rayed, and I got misdiagnosed initially. So I went to the track. It was, not broken. And then I got, diagnosed later that it was broken.
And that's your clutch hand, right?
Yes, clutch hand, yep. So the bone had actually, it was called a non-union. So it had no blood supply, it had died. And they had to do a bone graft and, surgery essentially, and put a screw in there. And that is pretty arthritic already. So even being 24, I already have a lot of problems with my wrist as it is. But I mean, it doesn't bother me when I ride, believe it or not. It bothers me more just sitting still, and just kind of aches whenever the weather's bad or whatever. That one was pretty tough. I had shoulder surgery in 2021. I went to the first race in Orlando, had trained all off season with Tim Ferry, was feeling great. And then in practice, I ended up wadding up in the whoops. And I was out for the whole year.
AC
pretty much.
joint or?
A grade 3 AC joint separation. And then I did a rotator cuff as well. And the AC joint is controversial because some people are like, oh, you don't need surgery on it. And then some people are like, hey, you need surgery. I feel good that I did the surgery because once he got in there, it was my AC joint, my CC joint, my rotator cuff. I had more damage than just, so I think it was the right call. But yeah, that one was really brutal. I think as far as pain goes, that was probably one of the most painful experiences in my life I've had so far, was that post-shoulder surgery feeling. Because I'm really I'm really bad about taking my pain medicine.
That's not a bad thing, dude, because that stuff sorry, I just interrupted you for a second. That can lead you down a dark path. I need to get surgery on my AC joint because I've got a grade 3, and I just have never gotten it fixed because it's like a 6-month deal. Am I right? You can't lift anything, and makes it hard to ride. But pain meds is like a rider's gateway drug. To be doing more hardcore stuff because of the adrenaline. But you were talking a little bit more about not taking those medications, and I commend you for doing it because it's bad shit one way or the other.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I you hear all these horror stories in our sport, and I think when I was younger, you're kind of naive. You're like, oh, I would never do that, But the reality is, there's no secret that a lot of us are in a lot of pain, and we have a lot of injuries. And I've been very fortunate, I feel compared to a lot of my friends.
Just a broken femur, a bone graft, and, you're 24 years old. Yeah.
Say it like that, you're like, oh, it's horrible. But seriously, in our sport, you know how it is. There's so much worse you can have, and there's so many injuries that can just take you out, period. But I think that the pain medicine is difficult because I was on I remember it was like the first couple days after, and every 4 hours you're supposed to take, whatever the hell it was, and I didn't want to take it, and then I paid the price one evening, and I remember just like barely moving, just this excruciating pain. So yeah, all those moments I think build character, and I look back on them. I'm glad that I'm not dealing with that right now, thankfully, but it's just part of the sport, and I wouldn't change it. It's a bummer that I think we all can agree that's the one true negative of our sport is the injuries. But, it's just too damn fun, this whole motocross thing.
It's the adrenaline junkie, addicted to the dopamine and serotonin drop from the brain. Yeah, man, drugs are tough because there's one thing that you probably can know as well. You can understand is that you will sell your soul to the devil to make like pain go away, once it becomes so excruciating. But the different side to that is you keep taking those pain pills, you can end up into the hospital because you're constipated and all sorts of other negative things with that. But turning the tide just a little bit, so we're not being so negative about stuff, is how was your amateur career? Did you know this is what you always wanted to do, Tristan, or was it something where it was just, okay, I'm getting fast, maybe I should try to make this a career?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I don't even think you could use the term like amateur career. It was just like I was a late bloomer. I still feel like I'm a late bloomer. I feel like I'm getting better all the time, but especially as an amateur, the typical story, right? Not to like make, oh, poor me. Didn't have a lot growing up. We kind of struggled just to go race at all. So my dad and I, it was like, I'm riding barred bikes. I'm racing an 85 and then also his 450 just to get more gate drops. And I'm like 12 years old. And, we just sort of did whatever it took to race. Like, I just remember my amateur career was just me racing every single weekend. Like, my dad would just get me to whatever race, wherever it was. We just pretty much went around Florida and then, the surrounding states and just raced all the time. So I think my practice and my training, so to speak, was not there. It was just a lot of seat time and a lot of racing experience, which was cool. I look back on that now and I'm grateful for it. But I'd say when I was like 15, 16, I started getting actually faster, and I'm on a big bike, obviously. I think where I kind of broke out, I guess, at least in my mind, was like B-class days. I went from being like, just like literally a nobody that, no one would have ever known who I was, except for maybe some of the local people around me. And I went to Mini-O's one year and was battling for like college boy championships and the 450B. I was like a good 450B rider.
Which is basically a pro class, nowadays.
Yeah, I remember I looked at a picture of a memory popped up on my phone the other day. And in that B class race, I was like racing Austin Faulkner, Lorenzo Locurcio, a few other guys, just like some guys I was like, wow, like I almost forget that these guys were all, in these races. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, I grew up around like Cincerello, I'm like in that age bracket. He was a little older than me, but I would see him around our local area and just think, I thought he was like literally Ricky Carmichael. Like I'm this total goon, and I can barely ride, and he's like this phenom. So, it was pretty cool. Like that was kind of like what in my mind, we're just like these rednecks that don't know what we're doing, and we're just like trying to learn, But I did get better, and I did get some support. I remember when I was like 16 or 17, right around actually when I broke my scaphoid bone real bad, I got a free Kawasaki 450. A local guy just saw me racing, was like, hey, I see a lot of potential in you. And he bought me a bike, and he was flying me to like the amateur nationals with his son. So, I'm like, we have never even gone out of Florida really to race other than maybe like Georgia a couple times. And then he's flying me to like Freestone, Texas, and he's going to take me here and here. And I ended up hurting my broken wrist. I just kept racing with it because I finally got a free bike, right?
Yeah,
so I'm like, I'm not going to go get a cast on this thing. I'm going to just keep racing. Like, he's going to fly me to these races. So I remember there's a video on YouTube of it that MXP TV or something did of me at Freestone swapping in these rollers. And that was like the beginning of the end for my wrist. It was like I'd already had a broken wrist, and then I landed on it again and just crashed super hard. So anywho, after that, I kind of had to take a step back for a while and, get healed up. And then I'd say what really changed as an amateur was, you take that leap where like I needed to make money, and I started struggling really hard because my dad, like they were just spread thin, my parents. So I was like, if I'm going to race, I think we got to the point where we talked and it was like, you got to at least be able to cover the weekend. You know what I mean? Like because I mean, Florida, I'll admit, does have some good money classes. Like there's a lot of racing that you can do in Florida and, make pretty good money. If
what
you're
could you
up.
make in the pro class?
It depends on the race. Like, so I grew up doing the Florida series a lot, which is the Diaz family. They run Orlando MX now. And there was, times when I was racing the A class or whatever, when I'd go to these races and make $1,000 on a weekend, which that's on the high side, of course. But, there'd be times you're making 300, 500, 700. I've had weekends where you're making $3,000 or whatever at like WW for some of these fastest in Florida races. So like I said, if you're willing to race and you're willing to hustle, growing up, that was kind of what I did. I sort of lived off of that, and we made it work. It wasn't glamorous, but that was like my transition into pro, I guess, was, you're beating up on everyone in Florida. And then I'd have a lot of these, fast, pros guys that would come to these local races, and I would beat them. And then before long, you're like, well, I'm already beating pro guys. Like I could probably, try and get a license or whatever. And then my goals changed. Like get a pro motocross license. And then, I tried to dabble with arena cross to get a supercross license. And to be honest with you, I just wasn't ready. I tried. I was decent.
Whoops are massive. They were massive.
Yes. Well, the arena cross, when I did it, like, it's like Amsoil arena cross. It was like real deal. Yeah. And nowadays, the futures and stuff, not to, shit on them, but it's a lot easier than what we do.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a highway.
Yeah, I remember racing like, Matt Gerke and, Chris Belos and the guys I shouldn't be racing against when I'm, 17 and like, just a goon.
Yeah, these grown men that are going to just put you over the berm.
Yes, exactly. So, but to sum up my amateur career, yeah, I raced the C class. Like I was in the novice class. My one and only championship, well, actually I won two, was Minio's in the 250C class, stock and mod. And you'd have thought I won pro sport. Like in my mind, I was like so pumped. And it's kind of sad because now I'm almost like, you're almost embarrassed to tell people like, because that's where I was as an amateur. I was not a top guy. I was just trying to learn how to get better with what we knew. My dad never raced. We didn't know much about it. So
Tristan, you make it sound like, because you said you were a late bloomer. So did you get an 85 first, or was it a 65? Like how old were you when you started riding?
So I started riding when I was 8, and my dad got me a KLX 110. So I was just on a pit bike, and we would just race local. Actually, the track I went and rode today, PAX, I would go race there and their local, winter series or whatever. And yeah, I just started from there, and then I went to an 85, and then I'd say where it jumped up a lot was like, I would say maybe 11 and 12, I was kind of like beginning to get better on like the 85, but not like a national level. Like I never did Loretta's or anything on an 80 or mini bike. 80 national for that matter, until I was a little bit older. But I started racing like an 85 and then the super mini, and then I needed more gate drops and more classes I wanted to race. So my dad would let me like borrow his 450, and then I would just race that in like the open 4-stroke class or whatever. And then before long, I just transitioned to a big bike because I'm like 6'1", 185 pounds. I'm a little bit, I guess, bigger in motocross. So when I was like 13, I was already like, 5'9", 5'10", near 6 foot. And I was just huge on a mini bike. So I fit a big bike better anyhow. So it was, I just look back on my amateur racing almost like it was just a stepping stone to just get me the hell out of there. I was not meant to be like an amateur racer, I feel like. So,
well, that is a good segue because you did the Monster Cup on a 250, but then after that, you really didn't do much racing on a 250. You went straight to 450. Was that more of a cost decision, or was it because of how tall you are and heavy you are, or was it both?
Yeah, the Monster Cup thing is like an outlier. It's like basically the backstory on that race. So I'm already racing as a pro, right, in the outdoors. And when I say already racing, I'm doing a couple nationals every year, maybe like two a season, forward to make it. Me and my buddy just in his van, just trying to go make qualify top 40. So I did a couple of those. And then somehow I got invited to race Monster Cup. I don't know what I did, or maybe it was I did Futures. That's what it was. So I did Futures on a borrowed 250 4-stroke because you have to go on a 250. So I wanted a Supercross license. And I decided I was going to set out in 2019, I think it was. I was like, I'm going to get my Supercross license. Like, I want it. That's what I want to do. So I did the Futures, and I think I started winning like a lot of the Futures main events, or I'd win the heats, and then I don't know how I did in the mains, but I would get my points pretty easy. So I ended up getting my Supercross license, and they invited me to go to Brian Deegan's house for a KTM ride day and then go race Monster Cup. And I'm like, hell yeah, of course I'm going to go do that. Like, I've never even been to California at this time. So, Brian Deegan, I was like, that's a dream. So we ended up going out there, and funny backstory, I ended up breaking my other scaphoid bone at Deegan's track that day. Go figure, right? New to Supercross. Broke that scaphoid and then decided to race Monster Cup. So I don't even remember how I did.
You had to at least give it a try,
Yes. And speaking of, dealing with pain, you can imagine, like, freshly broken wrist. I was in so much pain, and the Alpine Star Medic guys, they gave me a Toradol shot in my butt, and that was like the only way that I was able to get through with the pain. But so that race was sort of like, I'm already technically a pro, even though I am racing a amateur all-star, class. Yeah. But granted, like Jet Lawrence and good guy. And I had a broken wrist. But then after that, the whole, as far as cost effective goes, 450. It's just, it makes a little bit more money. You make more money racing a 450, and it just costs less. Like, my bike is completely stock other than suspension. And, you can go out there and you can make a main event. You can make top 40. You can do decent on a bike that's just bone stock versus a 250. I just feel like I never would have had a fair shot on a 250 because of, the budget that I was working.
Yeah, you'd have to put a lot of money into it to make it pull your ass around, at a...
Yeah.
What do you like better? Do you like motocross or supercross? Or do you think one... Okay, loaded question here. What do you like better, motocross or supercross? And what do you think is more dangerous? Supercross because it's more peaky, but it's slower? Or motocross because it's just much faster, but not as technical?
Yeah, those are good questions. It's hard to say. Like, you grew up riding outdoors your whole life, right? Mm-hmm. So you just sort of, that's, I guess, more comfortable. But Supercross, I'm just completely obsessed with it. Like, it's the pinnacle of the sport, in my opinion. And when I finally you're under the lights and you're getting that experience, it was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to be a Supercross racer, not an outdoor racer. Nothing against outdoors. I love it to death. It's just, it just feels different. It's like two different sports, in my opinion. When I race outdoors,
do you think you feel like you get more attention in the Supercross because of the sheer, just the production value of it? Does that lean into it a little bit?
A perfect example that just kind of like sums it up well is, you know how it is when you're racing. Like, your family is like, hey, how can I watch you race? What time do you race? This, that, and the other. When I'm in outdoors, I'll be in, 16th or something, and no one even knows I'm out there. I'm out there just having the battle of my life with all these amazing riders, and I'm dying out there, and I'm working so hard, and no one even knows you're there. Like, literally, the industry just pretends like you're not even, they don't even know you exist. Supercross, my family's watching me literally on TV. They see me, they're talking about you. Hey, you make your main event, they talk about you being that transfer spot, or even the LCQ. I've had some really crazy races in the LCQs, obviously, and, not against any slumps, like really good guys. Or They talk about you. So I think it just, overall, I think anyone that says that outdoors is better than Supercross, maybe they're more comfortable in outdoors, but I think the truth is, like, our sport is just trending towards Supercross, and as a privateer, it just makes more sense. But I've always prided myself on, trying to be pretty fit, and always, that was the one thing that I could control growing up, was just trying to be in good shape. And, my dad and I were really big into that. So outdoors has always tailored me in that sense. But I truly think that I have a good high ceiling with Supercross. I just think I'm still just scratching the surface. Like, there's just so much to learn. And it's definitely, as far as it being dangerous, it's hard to say. I think Supercross is very dangerous. Of course, like, I'm not going to say it's not. But I think outdoors, I'd say maybe outdoors is a little bit safer, in just the sense that the speeds are so slow and the tracks are so rough that most of the injuries I see in outdoors are not necessarily like the way it is in Supercross. Supercross, left and right, you were seeing guys just yard themselves. Myself included, I've done it a bunch. But you're watching the races and you're just hearing the fans when you're in the staging area or whatever, just losing their minds because someone did a triple front flip over a rhythm, or, crashed in the whoops or whatever. the tight track, I think with the hay bales too, the tough blocks make it feel really, really tight out there. I think there's just a high chance of air, and with how hard everyone's pushing and having that many bikes on a tight little track, I do think that causes a lot of injuries as well. But, overall, I guess you can hurt yourself in both, but I would still say Supercross is probably more dangerous. Yeah.
Okay. So good segue. What do you think about this whole Super Motocross series where now you're going to have 31 races as opposed to 29?
Well, that's a great point. I've been watching some of that press conference, and I've been kind of digesting a bit of it, as I know you are too. So this season, I raced 23 of the 29 pro races, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last year. Just to back it up, give you a backstory. Me being injured, I raced 2 times. I came back and raced 2 nationals just because I wanted to say.
Yeah, so this definitely was your rookie season, and to get your 2-digit number, your rookie season, dude. Like, I don't have a hat, but the imaginary one is hats off to you. But continue.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, and it basically, like, last year to go from being injured and racing twice to racing 23 professional races in the 450 class, it was no joke. And as a privateer, it's probably even harder than, how it is for the factory guys.
Oh, yeah, because you're driving.
Yeah, so we didn't do as much driving this year. We were we had a sponsor that came on board to haul our bike through TPJ. Okay. So we were able to fly to a lot of the races, which was amazing. But still, there were times we were driving, and I've obviously paid my dues driving. We've drove, across the country more times than I can even count. So I definitely know that we've paid our dues. But it was brutal. And there was a time in the season during outdoors Supercross too, where you almost start losing your mind. Like, you're flying out, I was like a routine oriented person because, you'd race on a Saturday, you'd fly on a Sunday, you would be, bike ride on Monday, recovery ride, stretch, whatever. Tuesday, I'm back on the bike. You're trying to get a little bit better, and then you fly out on the Thursday, and then sometimes we're doing press day at 5 a.m. on a Friday morning. It was like the weeks flew by so fast, but your body just gets so beat up. And like I said, I'm not at a stage yet where I'm killing it by any means. But, you still, even at the level I'm at, it was really brutal, and it took a big toll mentally and physically. And I think a lot of people don't talk about the mental side of it where, I was just so fried. Like, I remember during outdoors, I wouldn't even ride. Like, the last couple of races, I didn't ride at all for like a month. Like, I'm not kidding you. I would just race and then just go home, relax, do off the bike. I'd stretch, and I'm into cycling and mountain biking and stuff. So I would do train, not on my dirt bike. And you have nagging injuries during it, and you're having to heal those. And so it was just really, really tough overall. But adding more races to that, it is kind of, it's gnarly to think about. But, as a racer, like, my whole goal is to just make a living racing a dirt bike. And if that means I have to race, or I get to race more races, I'm all for it. But I do wish that maybe, our sport could go in a direction where instead of trying to up the races, right, and make it to where we're racing, near 30 weeks a year or whatever it's going to end up being. I think it's like, 32 now races or whatever. So 32 weekends, maybe get to where it's like, 25 races, but it's more quality, and they, you make more money, and it makes it to where the series is still long and they're both working. But, it's just, I'm sure everyone gets a little greedy, right? Because I know these promoters and the Feld and MX Sports, they want more races because that means more money, right? So I don't know. It's a tough.
You guys are just kind of the cattle, I guess, in all of this. The circus monkeys, because
I was gonna say, one of my main sponsor, Donald, he always jokes. He goes, "We're just the monkeys in the show." We're just wherever they tell us to go, we go. But yeah, I think that the Moto Supercross, or SMX, I like to call it because I can't ever say the real thing, the Super Duper or whatever.
I like the Super Duper.
Supercross Championship. I think it's cool for our sport, and I hope to be a part of it. You have to be top 20. I want to say to be seated in, and then I think they take 21 through 30 or whatever, to like an LCQ to try and get in that last couple spots. So I love the idea of us being able to make more money. Of course, I think that's the benefit is there's been competition, right? So World Supercross coming out, whether they like to say it, admit it or not, that's forced their hand, right? Like, it's twisted their arm, so to speak. They needed to come out with something to keep these top guys from leaving. So you've got Tomac going to the World Supercross round this weekend. but he's not going to be at the second one. And then, Webb wasn't able to do them. I think the Lawrence brothers got, shut down from doing
Anderson
it. So,
too. Yeah. Kenny lost his ride because of it. Yeah. There's a giant threat going on.
It's tough, right? And you just, in my opinion, they're not going to admit that, but obviously, Adam Bailey or whoever is putting those on, we should all be thanking him as privateers, because he's probably they're opening up doors, in my opinion, in the future for guys like myself. And if I can continue getting better, of course, that's the one common denominator, is I have to have the results and I have to prove myself, of course. But if I can get to a higher level, I think something like World Supercross, or even this, the combined, whatever that Supercross series
is. Super duper.
The Super duper. I think it's just opening up more opportunities, because someone on a podcast I was listening to recently mentioned a good point. They're like, there's going to be, October 1st, a lot of guys' contracts are up or whatever. So say these races happen to fall after that or before that, or, some guys might be able to, jump on a different team or a different bike, or maybe they kill it at these, playoff rounds or whatever they're calling them, and they get an opportunity for the next season that they wouldn't have gotten, right? Or I like the idea of, if a guy maybe isn't as good in outdoors or in Supercross, they can prove themselves in the other series and maybe get in. There's a bunch of ways to look at it.
Yeah, because there's no whoops, it looks like, on the track. And, there's just some riders are incredibly technical. Some riders are just WFO. They can just close their eyes and just hammer through stuff. No, Adam Bailey at World Supercross, they have changed the whole dynamic, because you guys are going to make more money, which is great. And if you look at the World Supercross riders right now, there's a lot of privateers that are on teams for these two races. But I do have to, a little hesitant, because every privateer, or the majority of the riders I talk to, they're just like, just what you said a few minutes ago, that, dude, not only is it taxing on your body, you need time to go get a surgery on your shoulder or your wrist or something. And then there's times that you just don't want to even touch a motorcycle, because they're kind of riding you guys hard and putting you guys away wet, and then expecting you guys to jump back on January 1st to go do it again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I finished Supercross, right, at Salt Lake City or whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, great season. Such a big leap forward for me, is just being able to make some main events and all that. And I'm pumped about it. And then you get, I think it was 2 weeks, and then we're at Hangtown, or no, Fox Raceway, or wherever the first round was. I don't even remember. And I mean, you're jumping into a new series of outdoors so soon. I remember, I hop on, I'm at, Fox Raceway or whatever for the first round of outdoors, and I hadn't even really rode outdoors. I just pretty much was letting my body recover from Supercross for those 2 weeks. And I was drinking beer and eating whatever for a couple of weeks. I was like, I'm just trying to relax.
Just staying in third gear, not shifting the motorcycle anymore.
Absolutely. So it's you got to look at it from different point of views. For some people, they're just ready to get into outdoors, and they're so excited, and they just want to jump right in if they're not racing all Supercross. Let's say maybe they only dabble with Supercross. A lot of privateers that do outdoors, they're not doing the full Supercross series mostly, right? They either pick one or the other. So,
the West Coast or East Coast usually.
Exactly. And as you know, there's a lot of privateer motocross racers that are just motocross. They don't even touch Supercross. So there's a bunch of ways to do it. I just think that it's going to get to a point where, you're going to burn out everyone, right? I mean, but at the same time, if you can be justified to burn yourself out because you're getting paid well, yeah, it's sign us up, because ultimately I think that all of us just love the sport and we love riding. And, for someone like myself, I would just love for that to be a reality where, every year you're just able to, even if I'm not on a team, maybe make enough money to where if I'm not getting enough support, I can be a good privateer, and that fits into some slot in our sport. Whereas nowadays, it's you're either a factory rider or you're like a Joe. You're like a privateer that's just struggling, it seems like. So it would be kind of cool if maybe these new series open up a new window for guys like myself where, we fit in, where maybe if you're not a top 3 or top 5 or top 10 guy or whatever, but you're close to it, you're able to maybe find a new home somewhere in one of these race series. So
Tristan, so you qualified, you had a bunch of top 20 finishes in Supercross, making the main event, which is a feat in its own. Would you mind sharing what potentially, if you were to finish 17th at a Supercross, and, you did finish 17th, you finished 17th at Indy, and then you finished 17th at Fox Raceway. Do you mind sharing what the pay difference was on those two?
Not at all. So for Supercross, and some of these numbers could be a little bit off, like give or take a couple, like $100 or whatever. I want to say Supercross, if you make the main and you finish, 17th, for example, I think it's something like 2,200 or 2,300 or something dollars. And then I want to say it was, KTM contingency was maybe like $600. So then maybe you're in the ballpark of like $2,800. And then I have like a contingency with FXR, so you can make a little bit more. And then, the whole goal for myself is I'm trying to get a contingency program because, I'm not on a level yet where you're getting like a salary necessarily. You're just getting bonuses, right? Yeah. So you're living, you're living off of whatever the purse is, which is never a lot, right? But you're also getting a little bit here and there from some some bonuses and contingency plans. And then, so let's call it like, I don't know, $2,800 maybe. Like I said, I'm drawing a blanket, maybe $3,000 at the most or whatever, but for a finish like that. And then,
and you're essentially the 17th, the best Supercross rider in the United States at that moment, and you get $3,000. Okay, motocross.
Yeah, exactly. And then outdoors, it's embarrassing, to be honest with you. Like it's almost hard to like talk about because you're like, it's so little. It's like not even worth like really saying, but it does work a little bit better because of contingency. Or with KTM contingency. So I want to say it's like $600 to get like a 17th, or maybe 800, but I think it's like literally like $600. Like, get 300 a moto. You go out there and you battle your life out, with like factory guys to get like a 15th or 16th, and you make like $300 that moto. It's pretty bad. Like I said, locally, I make, so much more than that racing these local races at times. But thankfully, KTM will give you, like, I think it's $600 for like a top 20 or something like that. So,
which is incredibly difficult to do. Yeah.
Yes. And so I want to say, like, with contingencies and stuff, sometimes it's like, $1,200 or $1,300 or whatever, but it's nothing to write home about. But like I said, I always go back to this. It could be worse, right? Like, I'm grateful just to be able to make anything, of course, racing a dirt bike, but I think there needs to be change.
But
for
see,
sure,
dude, that's forgive me for interrupting you. That's what I kind of want to change with the sport, is to get the riders to kind of flick their mentality a little bit, because for so long, all the riders feel as if like, okay, I'm getting this, I should be grateful for this. And it's like, no, no. You guys are essentially, exactly, you are the best riders in the world. All of you guys should be able to make enough money to go racing and make enough money to have a 1-bedroom apartment for the whole year and buy groceries and that sort of thing. So I come, truthfully, dude, like all of the riders, you guys are fast as hell, and you're incredibly humble. Some of the other ones, you got to be a little bit egotistical racing motorcycles. We all know that, right? The whole chest out around the pits kind of a thing. But you guys are worth more than what you're getting. And again, that is why the super motocross thing. Thank God for the World Supercross to kind of tell Feld and MX Sports to, hey, we need to come up with some more money, because it's ironic that they just came up with $10 million, for this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if we're getting extra money, imagine what they're getting, right? Because the lion's share is never in our favor. No, you're totally right, and like I said, that's where it's difficult, because as a privateer, especially, when we do these contract negotiations with sponsors and stuff, it's like, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but when I was younger, racing as an amateur, if you'd have told me, if I'd known the inside of the sport the way I do kind of now, and been able to open that curtain a bit, I would be blown away, because you kind of expect, like, hey, if you're even making the motos at a national against
you're an effing rock star.
Yeah, just to qualify, it is really difficult. And then especially like a main event, a Supercross in the premier class, like it's really, really tough, like really, really tough. So I just always I used to think like, oh, you're going to make a ton of money. You're going to get free everything. And I'm not exaggerating when I say, like, for the longest time, I was buying my gear. I was paying full price for literally everything. And luckily, the last couple of years, I've been taken care of really well by a lot of sponsors that have helped me a bunch. But still, it's tough, because like you're begging people almost for just anything, right? Like just to get by. And I guess for guys like myself, where you're right, like you almost aren't helping the cause. Like, hey, don't have that attitude of being, don't be so grateful that you're making this because it could be way better. But I guess when you come from not a lot, it's almost like a pipe dream to even be able to race, period. So you are excited just to be able to do it. But yeah, I mean, the way that you can make a living as a privateer is you have to have people footing the bill to where you're not paying anything. If it's not coming out of your pocket, then you can make it work. If you're racing, in my opinion, the 450 class, and you're doing all the races, you can make it work.
Yeah.
But it's tough. Like, it's not, obviously, as you know, it'd be a million times easier to just go get a normal person job or to do, normal things. But yeah, I don't know. I guess you just,
but
that
wouldn't be fulfilling you like what the sport is doing, because it there's a little bit both, as far as the sport is giving you I don't want to use the word sense of self, but it's just you're incredibly good at something and it makes you feel a certain way where you're happy when you're on the motorcycle, and never lose being humble, Tristan. And yeah, you're right. Everyone in the stadium, they would love to have your autograph because you're a rock star. That's little kids want to switch places with you, and the sport should be taking care of you guys more, to the extent of, why wouldn't a ticket sold just $1 like as a service fee, be a privateer purse for the riders, because you guys are the show. Without you guys, there is 12 or there's like 16 factory 450s out there, and then 16 250s. There's not that many riders to watch. The majority of the field is you guys. So I made a video a while ago of, if you just took $1 or something, or even a $5 fee, each rider would be making $5,000 minimum a race on top of the other purse, where that would be enough to sustain you guys to, you would feel incredibly even more grateful that you wouldn't want to do anything. You wouldn't want to badmouth anybody or anything because everybody was getting paid, so that's kind of the ultimate goal there. How much, okay, this loaded question here. How much is your Supercross suspension? Like, if you didn't have any sponsors or anything, what would a kit setup cost?
That's a great question. So, cone valve Supercross suspension for WP KTM, right? That's what we use, is a WP cone valve kit, front forks, and then the shock. And I know you're probably familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And then we use REP suspension, Research Engineering Performance, out of California. They're really good. I want to say it's like $8,000 just for the suspension itself, and then whatever the fee is that Mark Johnson charges for his services. Thankfully, I have a guy, Donald Davis, who's like my number one guy, sponsor. He covers all that for me, which I am extremely grateful for. But yeah, it is not cheap. I mean, you could put it this way: you can go buy a brand new dirt bike with it, right? Or have the suspension. So that's what we always pride ourselves on, is we're on a bone stock bike with a stock pipe and everything, but we have really good suspension. So that's kind of always been like, at least in my mind, that's what I've always said is, okay, I have a good handling bike, or good enough, right? Like, it's for the level we're at. I think it's the best you can have as a privateer like us. And I in my opinion, for Supercross, I credit a lot of the success to having, good suspension and being able to get some confidence, because it's just I'm so new to this that I still am learning how to test. Like, I'm still learning what I like. And like I kind of mentioned to you earlier, a lot of my struggles come from my whole life. I just borrowed bikes. Like, I never really had my own bike that I would just ride all the time. Something would break and we would just kind of find. I had a lot of really cool people that stepped up when I was younger and would just let me borrow their personal bikes. Like, a lot of vet riders would just, hey, here's my 450.
So you're used to not being picky, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And to a fault, like to the point where I literally will just hop on a bike and just sort of adapt to the motorcycle. That's all I've ever done. And it hurts you at some point because I don't really have like a comfort zone where I'm like, hey, this is what I like. This is my cup of tea. My bike's like my thing. I'm attached. It's got to be an extension of your body, right? When you're racing at this level, as you know, you want to race at a level where you're on the bike and it's totally comfortable to you. And for the longest time, when I got to the pro races, I was exactly the opposite of that. It was like the most uncomfortable I've ever been was when I went pro. It's like, you're just racing the most hammered tracks. I mean, those outdoors, are just destroyed. Like they're so hard to replicate that back home, and your bike is never set up for it. And to this day, I still struggle with that. But Supercross too. I mean, these Supercross main events it's like a bomb went off. I mean, they're just so rutted, so rough. So learning to set the bike up for that is really tricky. So I think that's been, the suspension is that expensive, and it's worth it though. It really is, because I think you can get, stock suspension. I'm sure if you dialed it in and had good people working on it, you could do that. But what I love about, REP, for example, is they have settings from guys that use that suspension and know more than I do about testing and all that. And they kind of can just plug it into your bike and be like, hey, does this feel good to you or whatever? And obviously, like, they've helped me set it up for myself, which has been cool. And I've learned a lot. I mean, I know it sounds so like elementary, but just learning about sag, like learning the way sag affects your bike and where your fork height is, and the clickers, and just stuff that I've always kind of known about but never actually felt. Now I can feel it when I ride, and I'm able to give better feedback, I'd like to think, at least. And yeah, it's been a learning experience. But suspension, in my opinion, is like 90% of it on a 450. So
would you say in motocross and supercross, or your opinion, would it be one, or which one would it be? Would it be both, or is the secret sauce like more supercross suspension and motor for outdoor? Like if speak to me as if like I was a beginner about it, because truthfully, the answer is both. You need damn good suspension for both.
Obviously, both is the answer. But what I'd like to say is, so I think that I could race stock suspension on an outdoor national and probably not be like a different zip code different as a rider. Like, I'm not going to say I'm going to be as good. I'm not going to finish probably top 20, but like, I think I could probably be pretty close, qualify probably not that far off, maybe a little different, but nothing drastic. Whereas if you gave me stock suspension on a supercross track, I'm probably going to die. Like,
you're going to go around the whoops.
Yeah, exactly. Like, may not make it, right? Or my ankles, rest in peace, my ankles and my wrists. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think Supercross for me was confidence inspiring to have really good suspension. And I came from Race Tech suspension, which I had good luck, and I used them my whole life. And
Hail the gold valves.
Great.
Hail the gold valves.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotta give credit where credit's due. Paul Thied, he knows a lot about suspension. I think they do good stuff. And I had a local guy, Jason Beck, who lives in Port Orange where I live, who's helped me my whole life. And he always dialed me in. And he never really had like a supercross guy, so to speak, or at least not many growing up. So it was kind of like I was his test dummy. Like, we were learning together, so to speak. And he did make me some good supercross suspension. So you can definitely do it. It was stock suspension, just whatever came on the bike, and he just did his valving with Race Tech. So you can make it really good. Don't get me wrong. I just feel like the cone valve, the A kit, kit stuff or whatever, I think it worked really well because, on a KTM, you got the steel frame. So I think that they invite a very stiff suspension. I think because there's more flex, everything stiff and rigid on the KTM typically feels better on Supercross, to me at least. So this stuff that REP suspension does, it is stiff, like really, really stiff. And I hate it. I didn't like that at first just because I'd never rode it so stiff. But once you break it in and you start to learn, like, it really can save you. Like, I have cased some big jumps and been okay.
How does it turn with it being that stiff, though? Does it still turn pretty well?
First, not as well. You're right. Yeah, it didn't turn as good at first. I was lucky enough to do a test with them in California before Supercross, and we kind of set the bike up for the turns because I'm a Florida boy, right? Like, I love my sand and
big
I'm used to softer. Yeah, so riding out west is it's just different. I love it. It's just different. So I struggled with that a lot and getting traction, right? So I was I've struggled in the whoops, trying to get better in the whoops, and especially on a 250, I felt really good in the whoops. On a 450, the extra weight, the more power, it was really intimidating for me. So when we were testing that day, we were at some a Derek Kelly's Supercross track in Menifee, California, and it's an awesome Supercross track, but it was like gnarly. Like, I was new to Supercross, and it was so scary. And I'm riding.
Your butthole's about this big.
Oh my gosh! I pull up the test, and it's Justin Barsha, it's Aaron Plessinger, it's like just some of the fastest guys, Vince Freezy, like all these really good riders, and absolutely in awe just watching them. And the whoops are like, 4 feet tall. And I'm terrified. So I don't even think I blitzed the whoops a few times that day, but it was like, hey, Mark's like, hey, I need you to like hit the whoops to, help set up the bike. And I'm like, do I have to? Yeah, can I please not?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we ended up setting the bike a lot for everything else. We set it up for pretty much the corners, the rhythms, and it worked really well. And in my opinion, I think that the cornering helped me a ton this year in Supercross. Like I had some pretty good qualifying times and stuff. And a lot of them, when the whoops, we're 450 group B at times, right? Like I got into group A a few times once I got better, but I was mainly group B 450. And if you talk to anybody, group B in the 450 in Supercross is like the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life. The track is at the worst, pretty much it'll be all day. And, it's like they prep the track, and it gets nice for like the A guys or whatever. And then the B goes out and it's like destroyed, like sloppy seconds, leftovers.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping the whoops half the time. You're literally just trying to survive. So the way the bike is set up is definitely, even though it is really stiff, like you said, if it doesn't turn, it's kind of worthless. So we have set the bike up better for that. And I'm learning, like, if you ride with less sag, right, and you lift the rear end up, it's putting more weight on your forks. So it kind of indirectly can make your forks feel softer, and it helps with turning. So, and you're not going super fast on the Supercross track where you have to worry about straight line stability as much, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I'm learning all this stuff slowly but surely, but yeah, it's a balancing act. I mean, you look at Stewart back in his day, he always washed the front end, and from what I've heard, he had like the stiffest forks ever. So he could bomb whoops, and he was amazing at charging stuff and just slamming into it. But, his cornering sometimes I think was sacrificed. So you got to pick your poison. But where I'm at and the stage I'm at, I just want to be fast in my turns. I want to be able to hit all the jumps and get to where I'm blitzing the whoops. And I think if I can corner really well, I think ultimately, that's what racing's about.
When are you going to start getting ready for Supercross again?
Yeah, so I'm technically started already. I'm not on a Supercross track yet, but October 1st, I put down the bad food and anything that's not healthy for me, and I tried really hard to just kind of get back into training, and I let myself. I mean, really, I had a month off, so
yeah, I'm like so you had 4 weeks and
yeah,
back at it.
Right, brainwashed we are. We're like, 4 weeks, I'm like I've fallen off, let myself go. Yeah, we were off for a month, and I didn't touch a dirt bike. I wanted to so badly. I already was itching after like 3 days just because of the routine.
That's good.
I wanted to let myself heal because I did hurt my ankle during outdoors. I don't really know what I did to it. I never got it checked out just because I'm already getting chased down for hospital bills as it is. So I try and avoid.
You just change your address in your cell phone.
There you go.
The trick is you get a dummy phone, from Walmart or something. You give everybody that number.
I'm talking to a privateer when you're telling me this. That's so accurate. That's funny. Yeah, so basically,
well, dude, again, that's where it talks to like small backup with treating the riders with respect is like, dude, okay, Supercross little bit more money wise because you're gonna make $3,000, but then if you were to knock yourself out, well, it's instantly like $10,000 at the hospital, like on the low end, and it would be nice to have the series have some sort of a group health insurance policy where it's like, okay, we have a $5,000 or $10,000 deductible because it's really, really expensive, but then you have like no co-insurance or something there afterwards, because health insurance is incredibly expensive. It would be nice for the sport to be doing something like that because every other major sport has those sort of incentives, and yeah, they kind of come with a little bit of a union, and I'm not a huge fan of the union because I am a conservative, but in this kind of situation, you guys are risking your lives. You guys are the show. It would be nice to have a little bit of some sort of incentives that way because the Asterisk Medical crew, they do everything that they can to help you guys, but it would just be nice to have a little bit extra.
No, absolutely. I mean, and talk about legitimizing like a series or a sport, if we had an insurance and health insurance like that, it would make a massive difference. It would give us a lot more security. And I mean, I hate to say it, but you hear these like the road to recovery. People like that company. I don't know much about it, but I always see whenever someone gets injured, Road to Recovery, can donate a bunch of money and they rally to try and help people. And you think about how it's like, man, like shouldn't we have something in place to where the sport? I mean, I know the people that are running the promoters and they're making a lot of money, obviously. you would think that that's something that could be possible. I don't know much about it, obviously, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know the ins and outs and the numbers and whatever. But, I think a lot of guys in our sport that are factory riders, I think they do policies on their body. I know I talked to Tim Ferry one time, and I think he said that he did a policy. He insured his body. Like, he literally insured, like, his ankles or something so that if he was injured, he could, basically not have to worry as much. And I think that might have been something that was a career ender for him, but he probably ended up cashing out on it. I don't really remember the ins and outs, but I remember him telling me about it. And I'm
some
like,
sort of
so
disability insurance, something.
Yeah, something like that. And I guess you can insure a lot. Like, my sister works for State Farm, and she tells me all the time, like, the things you can insure is pretty crazy, honestly. But it's, you hope you never need it. But, if you do, it could really save you. So I think that would be a big step for our sport. I know, I'm sure like the NBA and NFL, whatever, I'm sure they do that stuff. But again, I think that it's tough. Things are going to change because I think our sport's getting bigger. I think all this stuff, even though I joke about it, the super duper, whatever series.
I'm going to coin it, the super duper cross.
Yeah, there you go. The super duper cross. I do think it's overall really positive. I think it's good that we are in this situation where we're getting new stuff coming and it's exciting. Like, even watching that little press conference that they did, it's like, it's just cool to hear all this stuff being talked about our little sport. Like, I always think about, once you race, a full series or a couple of years, you start realizing it's just a small sport. Like, even though I'm a here, all those guys know who we are. Like, they see you on the track, even if you're the one getting lapped or whatever, you kind of know everybody. Like, you're a familiar face in the pits. So it's like, it's not a very large sport in the grand scheme of things. And it's kind of funny to think that it's like it does seem like it's getting bigger. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe
no. A 5-year deal with NBC Sports is no joke. A $10 million purse is no joke. But yes, it's a step in the right direction for sure, because you're, as much as I'm a fan of yours, dude, and like I get all nervous like watching you ride because you're incredibly talented at what you do. If you go to the grocery store, it's going to be very rare that somebody comes up to you and wants your autograph, but Kim Kardashian, she could go wherever and somebody's going to know who she is. But you taken out of a stadium or a motocross track, people don't know you that much. So that's where it's like, how do you make this more of a production of a show so that kids in high school and you just get more attention per se. And the Deegans are helping with that, with bringing in a lot more just views, and it's all good. It's just, we're probably going to see, this is the start is what I would say. And
I agree.
From talking with the owners of these promotions, they tell me that they've been talking about this stuff for about 5 years, and World Supercross has been in trying to become something for about 5 years. It's taken this long to get, there's been a lot of red tape that they've been trying to get over, which is kind of crazy considering how small we are. But I did cut you off, Tristan.
No, you're fine. Honestly, to touch on your point, you're right. Like, I can't imagine the hoops you have to jump through in our sport, because I will say this, I think a lot of people in our sport they're very core, right? Like, we're a very archaic industry. I think that we've done the same way for a long time. Like, we change from laps to minutes in the main events, and everyone's like freaks out because we're just so used to everything being one way all the time. And even though, like, maybe as a privateer, especially, like, Triple Crowns and stuff aren't as, they're not tailored toward guys like us necessarily, because you have to qualify like top 18 or whatever to even get in, and then you got to race in. It's difficult, but stuff like that, as a fan, it's exciting, and I love watching the Triple Crowns. So I always remember, like, that it is entertainment, and that's where I like, the first couple questions you asked about like motocross for Supercross feels like a show. Like, when you're going out and you're heat one, there's just nothing like that energy, because people, I mean, even like when I'm trying to get, support or sponsors or whatever, or even like say back home, someone wants to help me out, I always say like, hey, come to a race, like just come physically, go to a Supercross or whatever, be in the stadium, watch the opening ceremonies, watch them come out and do the, the national anthem. Like, it just I don't know how you can't have goosebumps standing on your body whenever you watch that stuff. It makes me get the chills, obviously, even just talking about it. But of course, I'm biased. We're in the
Yeah, we've
sport.
got the deep voice guy coming in, introducing everybody, and yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting sport. I think that no matter who you are, they can all agree on that. And it's tough because, like, again, I think I'm biased, but I do think that one of the problems in our sport is that if you're not a top guy, you're kind of a loser. Like, I mean, I can't, even friends of mine, like people that I consider a friend, I would think, they just don't get it. Like they kind of just think like, oh, you're just out there sort of just wasting gas. Like you're not
You're just
really a
twisting
part of
this. That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
When are you
But
gonna
it's
get a
like
real job, Tristan? When are you gonna get a real job?
Yeah, exactly. What's your plan B? I think that people don't give you enough credit. I think it's hard because privateers, you don't really get a lot of love. And you're right. Like, I like to think that we're kind of the backbone of the sport, so to speak. But it's tough because, I understand. Like, America, I think in general, loves winners, right? Like, we eat up the winner. Like, and I get that. You want to rally behind the best. And I'm a fan of the best guys in our sport. All the guys I race against, I'm a huge fan. I have so much respect for all those guys, and anyone that's tried to race, I have respect, because if you've gone out there, I think it humbles you no matter how good you are, right? Like you saw it with Deegan. Like, I think he's such an amazing talent, and I think he's going to be great. And I honestly respect him. I think he works hard. Like, a lot of people say negative things about, someone like him.
That's
but
what comes with fame. There's a fine line between love and hate, and the people that hate you, they just have a funny way of showing you the love. But I don't want you to. I did cut you off again, and I apologize, but I don't want you to cut yourself short either, Tristan, because I feel that a lot of the privateers, especially a privateer that's on a stock bike that is finishing the main events, given the right opportunities for success, dude, you would be a top 5, top 10 guy. You just need that little bit extra of, you need a little bit more who's, not how's. You need more people that are a little bit more knowledgeable about setup, about this, nutrition, all sorts of this stuff to kind of give you more of a complete package. And the privateers are 1,000% the underdogs in the sport, and everybody loves an underdog. We just need to show the world that we need to help the privateers some more.
Yes. No, you're totally right. And I agree. Like, guidance is a big thing that I have. Like, here's a good way. I was thinking about this the other day driving. Like, okay, so let's use like the Deegans, or, I'm friends with the Fairies. Like, they're great people. Evan's a up and coming fast kid, right? Like, a lot of these kids have this path. Like, they're on a path to groom them the best they can be, and to be one of these guys, right? And they're most likely going to be, right? I just feel like when I look back on myself and even currently, I'm just sort of, you don't really have the luxury to have a path. Like, you're just sort of like all over the freaking place. Yeah, like whatever it takes to survive, really. And, all the people I grew up racing with, they don't race anymore. I'm literally like the last one standing in my area. And it's pretty crazy. Like, I feel like I've overcame so much, and I feel like I'm every day I'm have new challenges in the sport. But I think you just got to not be a quitter. You have to have that like fight mentality, kind of bulldog stance, and be stubborn. And I also have a belief that if I'm getting better, whenever I have so much to gain, like say I'm on the worst bike in the paddock, right? Or whatever, I still think I can be so much better because my riding skills are not where they can be. Like, I'm working all the time. Like, even today, I'm at a local easy track that I grew up riding, but I'm still working on just trying to find ways to be a little bit better. And my corner.
And you don't have a trainer, do you? You don't have a riding coach or anything?
So I bounced around a little bit. I've had opportunities to train alongside Tim Ferry before. And then Brad with Club 57 out at WW, he's helped me at times. And, I've had people that have, Josh Woods at GPF. Like, I've had people that have helped me and kind of been influential for little bits, but it kind of always comes down to money. It's so expensive to do it. And, if I had my way, of course, I'd have a trainer full time. But off the bike, I don't think I struggle so much with that. I've always felt pretty competent with that. I think it's just on the bike, I am such a student of the sport. Like I watch everything you can watch. I listen to everything you can listen to. I study every race you can. I'm like a massive fan of the sport, and I'm always trying to find a way to be better. I just think that sometimes like I overanalyze. Like sometimes I wish I had a pair of eyeballs on me that could say, hey, this is what you're doing. Because there's so many times where I'm out there at a track or qualifying and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this all wrong and I'm doubting myself. And then I look back at the video or the segment time and I'm like, I'm right there, or sometimes even better than some of these like factory guys in a segment time. But I'm probably just messing up like a second or two here in this section.
Yeah, you're just taking the wrong line. You need to just go a little bit wider, a little bit inside. You know, maybe inside of the whoops, outside of the whoops, maybe miss the second one. You just need somebody there to kind of just tell you who goes to the races with you. You know, do you have a mechanic?
So Donald Davis, my main sponsor, he is my mechanic as well. So I always joke, he wears many hats. He's like, you know, he's a mechanic. He's almost like a stepdad. He's a little bit, he probably is way more than he wants to be. But he's like, he's the guy that goes to the races with me. But luckily, my fiance, she comes to a lot of the races. She's able to whenever she can. So that's really our little crew. You know, it's not much. It's really just Donald and I. Yeah. So we always joke like we're just these, you know, these bums like trying to make a name for ourselves in Supercross and motocross. But yeah.
Do you compare yourself to anybody when you are at a professional event, or do you try to just stick with, you know, what you can focus on?
I definitely do. Like I try not to, you know, because here's what I've learned with myself. Everyone's different, but whenever I start comparing to other people, I always get down on myself because the way I like to think of it is like my story and my chapter, like the way where I'm at. I don't think anyone else on the track is in the same position as me. Well, I know they aren't. You know, like I went to school, you know, I went to college. Like I lived a normal life. Like I didn't do your traditional path to being a pro. So I always try and remind myself that, you know, I'm 24, turning 25 soon. Sometimes I almost feel like, you know, I talk to people, I'm like, am I old? Like, I almost feel like people think you're like old.
Yeah, like you're going to be 25 plus, so you might as well give up now, kind of a.
Exactly. Yes. And it's like, I'm such a rookie in my mind. Like, I'm literally just learning. And it's just the sport, like I said, it's very stuck in its ways with certain stereotypes and beliefs with that kind of thing. But I feel like I try to not compare though, because there's so many good guys. Like when we're in like qualifying at a national or Supercross, I watch these guys do stuff that is just like, it is ridiculous. Like it is crazy how fast they're going. But it's also like, it makes me realize a lot of it, it's not like they were just born that fast. Like they worked to get there, you know, they put in the time. And I think,
and they have a lot of help. They have a lot of help. They've got the right equipment and everything to help.
I like to say it takes a village, right? Like it's all the pieces. I had this argument the other day with my dad. We were joking, like Tomac, for example, like I'm a big Tomac fan. Like I think that guy's an animal. I just love watching him ride. He's just a beast. So I watch a guy like him, and he is not Tomac like on Cowie, right? He wasn't always Tomac in certain years. You know, he would have moments where he would go beast mode and just destroy everyone. And then he'd have races where it's like, who is that, you know? So I always say, you know, it just goes to show you, even a guy as dominant as him, when he's comfortable and he's put in that window where he's gelling with the bike, he's mentally and physically in good shape. You know, he has confidence. The setup's good, all that. He can just go and ride like Eli Tomac. But then there's other races where he's, you know, fifth, and you're like, well, that's so strange. You know, that's not like that guy. So I always try and remind myself that, you know, like hopefully one day I'm, you know, in my best version of myself, and I have the best bike or a better bike, and maybe I finally can break out and you know, showcase what I'm capable of. But I have, like I said, I have so much I need to work on. And I think a common mistake with a lot of privateers, if I'm being honest, and again, this might go against a little bit of what we always, you know, we were talking about, like give ourselves more credit, but a lot of privateers do kind of give a bad reputation for a privateer at times, because I think they always want to say, oh, you know, I need this and that. And then they're not willing to work for it. You know, they don't work as hard, because like, the truth is I have gotten to train alongside factory guys. Like I've gotten to train with Sexton before at ferries. I've trained with RJ Hampshire before. He's a Florida guy. You know, I've rode with a lot of these top guys, and they work hard. Like there is no such thing as a factory guy, in my opinion, that just mails it in and doesn't train. Jason Anderson, I love how people think he like, you know, he's King Fried, doesn't train. That guy works.
Dude, it's almost like a perfect persona. Is if you show everybody like, hey, look at this, but in the background, you're the one bleeding and sweating. You're going to have that mental voice in your head. How can I beat this guy? Because all I show is this. Like there's a book, Matt Frazier, CrossFit champ. You know, I don't know if you do CrossFit or anything. It's decent for moto, but for the longest time, he didn't tell anybody when he was injured or they didn't have any kind of persona because he wanted that clout. He wanted everyone to think of him as a shadow, that he couldn't be beat, kind of a thing. And you were touched on this a little bit, that when you compare, you kind of get down on yourself. And there's a quote that comparison is the theft of joy, you know, because you're always in a different scenario than somebody else. You know, your reality is always going to be different than somebody else. And our thoughts, you know, they're not facts, Tristan. They try to tell us a story to tell us, hey, this might be what might happen. This might what happen. This might what happen. And it's very difficult, especially somebody like yourself that's digging and banging their head against the wall trying to figure out what that special formula is. But then you have all this stuff going on like, hey, if I could have just done this a little bit better, if I could have just done this a little bit better. One of the things that I would recommend you doing would be to hit up some, you know, motivational sports books. And I think in a little bit in your downtime, that might give you a little bit more clarity of what you could focus on. I know reading sounds, you know, cliche-ish, but it's something that I wish I would have done because it would have helped control, you know, my inner self, so that I could be more of I could be more of a brick house at the track.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think I've dabbled with it. You know, I think again, there's so many funny things about this sport, right? Like the second you say, oh, I have a mental coach, or I'm struggling mentally, people think, oh, you're weak, you know, oh, you're a head case. Let's be real, we're all head cases. Every top guy is a head case. If any of these people knew how big a prima donnas a lot of these factory guys are at times, or how, you know, mentally disturbed they are at times, they would be mind blown, because they're all humans. Like I told you, we touched on how long the series is. I mean, they're normal. It's normal. We're all just humans. We're trying. So I always try and remember that. But yeah, it's tough, because when I compare, like you said, comparison is the theft of joy. So it's like, I try to remember that where I'm at, put it this way, where I'm at, I never thought I'd ever be able to be. So that alone is a win. Like I've already won, really. For
two
me.
digits, man. 2 digits is legit.
Yeah, thanks, man. You're right, for sure. And I think that, like, it's just tough, because you always want more. It's human nature. Like I always joke, like if we got paid $100,000,
you know, want
minimum to. I'd want 200 grand, and then eventually I want $1 million. It's just how I am. It's how humans are. So it's tough, because but it helps you as an athlete, because I think you never settle. Like motocross racers, in my opinion, are some of the best at this, where we're never satisfied. Like you know, Tomac just dominated. Just one Supercross, one outdoors, was just a complete freak. And I promise you, he's already trying to figure out how to win Supercross again. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way his mind works. And it's really neat, because I think this sport humbles you and teaches you things that real life can't, you know, or at least isn't going to teach you as well. I've learned so much about relationships and about business and about, you know, my body, and just training and working hard from racing. And I think that the mental side of it, though, is so underplayed. It's so not talked about. Like, you know, I know you know all this stuff, because I know how involved in the sport you are, but guys like Cooper Webb, you know, you think of him and he's just a mental giant, right? And then guys like Ken Roxon, who obviously is mentally tough. You can't say he's not, but he has had moments where, you know, he looks to be on the outside looking in, a little rattled or whatever. But it just shows you, like, you know, people.
Well, you use the example of Tomac going from 9th to 5th. Or for 1st to 5th or 9th, you know, that's the same thing. And go ahead, Tristan.
Exactly. I mean, there's just so many variables. I think that our sport has more variables than almost any other sport that people can't talk. I mean, it's almost mind blowing to me, because I just think that people are so quick to write you off. You know, like the second that you have a bad race, it's like, oh, what happened? And I do it too. Like sometimes I find myself either writing myself off or writing other people off, but I always try to remember that everyone's going through something. All the racers have nagging injuries. Everyone's got, you know, pressures. They're riding for a job. You know, like for example, I tell this story. I told it on Pulp MX one time, but it's kind of funny, because my first main event, I made, I was getting close to being lapped by Wilson, and he didn't lap me. And then I want to say the Tomac came around and was going to lap me on like the last lap or whatever. And basically Dean didn't want to get lapped by Tomac, right? And in his mind, he thought that I like held him up from, he wouldn't have gotten lapped by Tomac. But the honest truth is I did not hold him up. Like, it was the last lap. I looked around. I was making sure I was fine. So after the race, he's freaking out on me, like losing his mind, like wanting to, like, I thought he was going to try and fight me or something. Like, he was that mad. And it's just funny because it makes me realize how mental the sport is. Like, I didn't realize, but Tomac had lapped like 7th place. Wilson got 7th in the race, I think, and he got lapped. So it just shows you the best guys that are factory. I mean, I'm sure he's getting
everybody
paid
is telling themselves a certain story in their head.
Yeah. And then what's funny is, in my mind, I was so excited. I just got 17th in my first main event. I was pumped. And it's like, everyone's situation's different. But again, if you were to tell that guy, oh, hey, you're going to be Tristan Lane and get 17th in the main, he'd be like, are you kidding me? He'd be like distraught, like, oh, something must have happened. But it just, where I came from, and then where I've came from, but also where I'm wanting to go, I feel like this is a great step, and I took positive from it. So I always just try and remember everyone's situation is different, but it's hard. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't, we all struggle. I've had moments where, it's like a mental breakdown. You feel like you're like, to do this. We've all contemplated quitting a million times, but it's just one of those things where I think a lot of people misunderstand our sport. A lot of my friends and family, and I know all about this. People don't get it. Like, a lot of people don't understand it. But I think that it's I overall think it's all positive, and I love it. And obviously, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
So.
Well, reality is just perception. Two people could be sitting down, eating dinner. One person could be actually enjoying the dinner. The other person could be worried about the giant triple that they have to jump, the next day. And so two people are literally doing the exact same thing, but emotionally they're in completely different places. And that's just real life. And Tristan, from the hour and a half that I've spent with you, dude, you seem like a bright young man that is going to be good at whatever he decides to do, whether it's continue racing motorcycles or moving on later on in life. And I want to ask you, last two little bits.
Yeah.
What keeps you coming back, like passion-wise? What keeps you so in love with the sport? And then finally, what is your schedule for next year? Are you racing the whole deal, or what are you set up with? And then lastly, who do you want to thank, and how can we find you, and how can we support you?
Yeah. To touch on the first part, I mean, I think I'm just obsessed with progress. Like, I guess I just get so excited to try and get better. Like, I'm honestly just, and I'm like, I watch myself ride videos of me riding Supercross, and I just picking myself apart. Like, oh, I can be better here, better here. I love the progress. I love being an athlete. I'm like, if I always say, like, if I wasn't racing, I'd probably be doing something psycho, like, some crazy endurance stuff off the bike. Like, I've ran a marathon. Like, I love competing and just fitness stuff. Like, I love that motocross brings out the absolute lowest of lows and highest of highs for myself. Like, I'm almost like obsessed with suffering, I guess you could say. I know that sounds bad,
No. It's
I mean, it's like there's something about the sport that just it's like it's in my blood, and I'm just fully addicted to it. And especially now that I've gotten to a level where, like, I'm able to sort of see new horizons and some interesting stuff. Like, it kind of gets you even more hooked into it, really. But yeah, I mean, all the injuries and there's, like I said, there's a million reasons to not go racing, but I always find a reason. I'd say I'm very stubborn. I have a goal to just I want to maximize what my abilities are. So I've always said, like, I have a plan where my plan is I want to see how good I can get, not how good this guy gets, and keep it all about myself. Because, like I said, I've already in the grand scheme of where I was as a kid. I mean, I've already done better than I ever thought. I never thought this would be possible. And to be honest with you, I don't think my parents really knew that this would be possible either. So I already feel like I've done more than I ever thought. But I just am excited to see if I'm capable of doing better. And, I have a lot of personal goals. I'd love to be able to be a racer where I'm racing for a living on a team, and I'm able to be, at the top level of sport. I don't, is that a reality or not? I don't know, but I'd love to find out and just,
And dude,
yeah,
you're on the
ultimately,
precipice of making it happen.
thank you. Yeah, I think the sport is just it's completely sunk me into it, and I just keep coming back because of that. What if, like, what if instead of you can be negative, like, oh, what if I don't make it? What if I fail? But what if I find a way to get better? What if I make amazing relationships? And also, I think it's my dream. It's like a passion of mine, and I'm able to chase it right now. And I've just always said, like, I don't ever want to regret anything. So I guess another thing that keeps me coming back is I don't want to have regrets. And I remember telling myself, a little side story, I was like, when I got hurt last year, I thought I was going to have to quit because I
Was this
was
your
struggling
femur
so bad.
or was this your shoulder?
Yeah, my shoulder. And I was struggling so bad financially. Like, I was coaching off the bike to make money, and it was just tough to make ends meet, and I just having a mortgage and having all these pressures to pay bills. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. So I remember thinking, like, I need to go get like a real job or whatever. And it was like in that moment, though, I remember telling myself, if I don't at least make a main event in Supercross, I don't know how I could like live with myself, because I came so close on a 250, like finishing right there, but not getting in. So it was like a big monkey off my back, because that's maybe be like a small goal for a lot of people. But for me, that was like, like I said, Supercross was really just not really a real
that's
reality.
killing Goliath, is what making it. Yeah.
Exactly. Where I was thinking of, I thought it was at least. But of course, we always change. So that definitely keeps me coming back, all that stuff, the excitement of it. It's super cool. And then what was the next question? I'm sorry.
The next question is, what is your schedule like this year?
Yeah, so I'll be racing, if all goes well, of course. I always say, like, as a privateer, nothing's written in stone, right? It's always up in the air. But I will be racing all Supercross and motocross in the 450 class. So that's the plan. I'm actually...
And some super-duper cross, because you're going to qualify.
Super duper, yeah, that's the plan. I'm exploring any option, really. I have a good thing going with Donald, my guy, right now, and we're gonna probably do the TPJ route again, where we just get our bike hauled to all the races. And
do you mind sharing how much it costs to be on that program?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact figures. Donald handles all that, but I want to say it's like $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, something in that ballpark.
Just for Supercross, or?
I think that's for both. I want to say. I don't know if one's more than the other. Like I said, the numbers might be a little bit off, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, it's not cheap, but if you were to really think about how much it would cost to do it on your own and to drive all those races, I mean, it's a thing. And Mr. Ted Parks, he's awesome. Like, that guy, he does so much for the sport and for privateers, and he's super funny, but he's helped me a ton, because just being able to have the opportunity to put our bike and go to the races like that. Like, for some people, they may think like, oh, great, your bike's under at the race, an awning, whatever. That's great. Congrats. But to me, that's like half the battle, just getting to the race. Me being present at the stadium or the outdoor venue.
Well, and being fresh, because you get a fly. As opposed to driving 18 hours and then you're like, okay, now I got to get on that motorcycle.
Yeah, I'm able to get home and ride during the week and kind of feel what it's like to be a true professional, where you're like, when we were privateers, and I'm a privateer, but when we're like doing it the hardcore route, where I'm driving, we were driving to California and then to Colorado, and then we're driving all over the place. I just remember Donald and I would look at each other and be like, this is going to kill us. Like, we're going to just pass out at the wheel, and it's going to be the end of us. But we have gotten to a new level where, thankfully, we're able to be flying to some of these races, which is really cool. So we're like, we're doing like elegant privateer status, I'd say, but still obviously full on privateers. But yeah, I mean, that's the plan, is to do the full series again. But, I'm always open to anything. And I've had some talks with some different people about doing some different series and, different teams and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's tough, because a lot of the teams, it's kind of like smoke and mirrors, like, I think it seems maybe better than it really is.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the benefits of being a privateer is you have a lot of freedom. Like, I can pretty much do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, which is nice,
no
because,
obligations.
Yeah, you get kind of owned by certain teams and stuff, and that's great. Like, that's awesome. But I think that where I'm at, we have a lot of fun. Like, Donald is an enthusiast, my main sponsor. He's an enthusiast of the sport, and he just loves it. and he doesn't ask for anything in return. He truly just loves being on the gate with me, and he's in the trenches, and we have a good thing going. So I'm gonna just ride it till the wheels fall off.
And well, dude, you're humble and you're positive, which is important. You know, don't lose that. Don't start being negative, because things are gonna follow and things are gonna kind of stack on top of each other. Tristan, where can we follow you and how can we support you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Tristan Lane 711. So I'm pretty active on that, and then my Facebook is just Tristan Lane. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the easiest way you can get in touch with me. My email is tristanlanemx@gmail.com. So you can email me as well. Like I said, it shouldn't be too hard with today's world. You know, you can contact people pretty easy, just like yourself. Like I've been following.
Yeah, you didn't respond to my messages that easy.
Dude, I'm sorry. I swear to you, I did not even see it. I did not know, and I felt so bad when I went to go read it. I was like, "Oh my gosh," because
I was like, "This is 6 months ago. What the fuck is this?"
No, literally, I keep up with all your videos, and I'm very, like I said, I'm a fan of the sport, so I watch everything you put out, and I was pumped to get to talk to you, but yeah, those are pretty much the easiest ways to contact me, and obviously, like as far as support goes. I mean, we're all in the same boat, but it's just the financial backing to get to the races. I mean, that's the biggest part because, you know, my guy Donald that helps me, you know, we're reaching out to sponsors. Like, I almost feel like I have a second job whenever I'm not racing, which is to reach out, try and explore every opportunity I can and partner with people. And like I said, one of the cool things about helping out someone like myself is because we have so much freedom, we're able to be with people that we choose, that we think are good fits with us. And like I said, I do think I bring value in the sense of I'm racing supercross and motocross. A lot of guys, a lot of privateers especially, whether they can't afford it or they just choose to only race supercross, they only do, you know, half the series. So I've always thought that that's a benefit. You know, I race both, and I'm really investing a lot to try and get better. I'm actually moving to California in November for 3 months to try and, you know, do an off season there and just get better, you know, just be around faster people and maybe open up some new opportunities. Who knows? But yeah, all that stuff is not cheap. So any support is obviously super appreciated. And if I can help and on the back end to help a company, a person, you know, do any type of advertisement or, you know, help out the companies and stuff, I would love to do that. And my sponsor Dalton would as well. So we've got a bunch of real estate on my gear, on my helmets, on my bike, all that good stuff. So
is there anybody you'd like to thank as well?
Yeah, Silverback Racing, Donald Davis. He's my main guy. American Recycling Center, Tim Hughes. He is the man that came on board to get my bike to all the races. I owe so much to him, and yeah, I can't thank that guy enough. Jason Beck from Beck's Tech. He's been a long-time supporter of mine. FXR has been great. I'm going to draw a blanket for us, but Scott Goggles, Motion Pro. I'm getting SKDA. Dunlop has been amazing. Those guys are like family to me. Recluse has been awesome. Seat Concepts. Geez, I know I'm forgetting people. KDM Glasses. Who else am I forgetting? Anyone that helps me, I really, really appreciate it, and I hope that I can make them all
your
proud.
Your fiance and that husky in the background.
Yep, my husky Aspen. I definitely need to thank my fiance because, you know, I'm pretty sure that her life is like 100% more stressful with me in it because of what I do. But she supports it.
Well, dude, that's how you know that she's not going to leave you, is because you've already given her plenty of opportunities to.
Gosh, listen, my dog's coming to say hi. Yeah, Sydney pretty much has had every reason to leave me 100% and has somehow stuck around. And I'm just glad that she thinks I'm cool because most people don't. But I need her for sure. So
well, Tristan, it has been a pleasure. I'm gonna have all your links in the description below. So if you guys want to email him and if there's any way you can help out, you know, I'm sure he won't say no. And do you want to brop with me, Tristan? You know, and
I don't know what that means.
It's like a silly cliche, a bra da 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 at the end of the videos, right. Or is it something that you could do?
I can probably do it. Is it like a Redbud chant?
It's like basically a Redbud chant, but it's just a brop.
All right, mine's gonna be lame. Yeah,
dude, trust me, you get used to feeling like an idiot. So all right, you gotta hold it. WFO, bra da da da. Whoa.
Yeah. Oh, yours is way better.
I do it all the time, dude. Man, I can hit another gear.
like There you go.
I wake
there
up
you go.
my daughter quite often doing that.
I believe it. You can't get the dirt bike side out of you, huh?